The snowstorm hit North Platte, Nebraska with a vengeance that January morning in 1878, turning the prairie landscape into a white nightmare that swallowed everything in its path. And Beatrice Grant was caught right in the middle of it. She had only meant to walk the half-mile from the boarding house where she worked as a seamstress to the general store for thread and buttons. The sky had been clear when she left, crisp and blue the way winter skies often were in Nebraska. But the weather turned faster than a rattlesnake strike, and within minutes the world disappeared behind a wall of white. Beatrice pulled her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders, realizing with growing terror that she had no idea which direction she was walking anymore. Her fingers were already numb, her face burning with cold. The wind howled like a living thing, pushing and pulling her in different directions until she stumbled and fell to her knees in a snowdrift. She tried to stand, but her legs would not cooperate. The cold had seeped through her worn dress and into her bones. At 20 years old, Beatrice had survived many hardships since arriving in Nebraska 3 years ago from Pennsylvania. But she had never felt anything like this bone-deep cold that made her want to simply lie down and sleep. Her mind grew foggy. She could not feel her hands or feet anymore. The snow continued to fall, already covering her skirt and beginning to pile against her back. Somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard a horse's whinny, but the sound seemed to come from another world entirely. Her eyelids grew heavy. The cold did not hurt anymore, which some distant part of her mind recognized as a bad sign. She slumped forward, her cheek pressing against the snow, and darkness began to creep in around the edges of her vision. Strong hands gripped her shoulders, lifting her. A voice, deep and urgent, broke through the howling wind. "Madam, madam, can you hear me?" Beatrice could not make her mouth form words. She felt herself being lifted, held against something warm and solid. A horse, she realized dimly. Someone had put her on a horse. Arms wrapped around her from behind, holding her steady as the horse began to move. She wanted to ask where they were going, wanted to thank whoever had found her, but the cold had stolen her voice along with everything else. Time became strange and elastic. She was aware of movement, of the steady rhythm of the horse beneath her, of the warmth of the body pressed against her back. Then suddenly there was shelter from the wind, and light and blessed warmth. She was being carried again, this time into a building. She heard a door slam shut, cutting off the shriek of the storm. "Jesus, you are frozen solid," the voice said, and this time she could hear it clearly. A man's voice, rough with worry and something else she could not quite identify. "I need to get you warm, madam. I am going to remove your wet clothes, but I promise you I am a gentleman. I am just trying to save your life." Beatrice wanted to tell him she trusted him, that she understood, but her body would not obey her commands. She felt him removing her shawl, her dress, her stockings, all of them stiff with ice. She should have been embarrassed, but she was too cold to care about modesty. He wrapped her in something soft and warm, blankets that smelled faintly of horses and leather and wood smoke. Then she felt herself being lowered near a source of heat. A fireplace, she realized. The warmth hurt at first, pins and needles shooting through her hands and feet as sensation slowly returned. "That is it," the man said softly. "Your color is coming back. That is good. That is real good." Beatrice finally managed to open her eyes fully. The first thing she saw was the fire crackling in a stone fireplace. The second thing she saw was the man kneeling beside her, watching her with concerned eyes the color of prairie grass in summer. He had dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, a strong jaw covered in several days' worth of stubble, and a face that was handsome in a rugged, weathered way that spoke of long days in the sun and wind. He looked to be in his mid-20s, dressed in work clothes and a heavy coat that was now draped over a chair, dripping melted snow onto the floor. "There you are," he said, his mouth curving into a smile that transformed his entire face. "Thought I might have lost you there for a minute." "How are you feeling?" "Cold," Beatrice managed to whisper, her voice hoarse. "So cold." "I know, but you are warming up, I can see it. Just keep breathing, nice and steady." He reached out and tucked the blankets more securely around her. "I am Isaac Mills, by the way. This is my place, about 2 miles outside of town. I was coming back from checking on my horses when I saw you in the snow. What in God's name were you doing out in this storm?" "It was not storming when I left," Beatrice said, her words coming easier now as warmth seeped back into her body. "It came on so fast, I got turned around, I could not find my way back." "These prairie storms are hell," Isaac said, standing up and moving to a small stove in the corner. "They come out of nowhere and turn deadly in minutes. You are damn lucky I found you when I did. Another 10 minutes and—" He trailed off, not needing to finish the sentence. They both knew what another 10 minutes would have meant. Beatrice watched him as he poured something from a kettle into a tin cup. Steam rose from the liquid, and when he brought it to her, she could smell coffee, strong and bitter. He helped her sit up, keeping the blankets wrapped around her, and guided the cup to her lips. The coffee was hot enough to burn, but she did not care. It was the best thing she had ever tasted. "Slowly," Isaac cautioned. "Your system has had a shock. Do not want you getting sick on top of everything else." "Thank you," Beatrice said, looking up at him. "You saved my life." Something flickered in his green eyes, an emotion she could not quite read. "Anyone would have done the same, but you were the one who did it." She took another sip of coffee, feeling strength slowly returning to her limbs. "I owe you everything." Isaac looked uncomfortable with her gratitude. He turned away, moving to the window and pulling back a curtain to peer outside. "Storm is still going strong. Looks like you will be stuck here for a while. I hope no one is expecting you back soon." "Mrs. Henderson at the boarding house will worry," Beatrice said. "But she will assume I took shelter somewhere when the storm hit. She knows I am sensible enough not to try to walk through a blizzard." "Good." Isaac let the curtain fall back into place and turned to face her. "I have got a spare bedroom. It is not much, but it is warm and dry. You can rest there until the storm passes and you are feeling stronger. I will ride into town as soon as it is safe and let Mrs. Henderson know you are all right." "You know Mrs. Henderson, madam. This is North Platte. Everyone knows everyone, whether they want to or not." He smiled again, and Beatrice felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the cold. "I have lived here all my life. My father had a ranch about 10 miles north of here, raised cattle. He passed 2 years ago, left me this place and a small herd. It is not much, but it is mine." "I am sorry about your father," Beatrice said softly. "Thank you. He was a good man. Taught me everything I know about ranching and horses." Isaac moved back to the fire, adding another log. "What about you? You are not from around here originally, I can tell from your accent. Pennsylvania. I came west 3 years ago after my parents died of influenza. I had nothing left back there, and I heard there were opportunities out west for people willing to work hard." She pulled the blankets tighter around herself, feeling suddenly vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with her state of undress. "I have been working at Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, doing sewing and mending. It is not much, but it keeps me fed and gives me a roof over my head." "That is hard work," Isaac said, respect evident in his voice. "I have seen Mrs. Henderson's place. She runs a tight ship. You must be good at what you do if she has kept you on for 3 years. I try to earn my keep." Beatrice finished the coffee and set the cup down on the floor beside her. She was feeling much better now. the warmth of the fire and the hot coffee working together to chase away the last of the deathly chill. My mother taught me to sew when I was young. It is one of the few skills I have that is worth anything. Do not sell yourself short, Isaac said. A good seamstress is worth her weight in gold out here. Most folks are wearing clothes held together with prayers and hope. He paused, then added, I've got a shirt that needs mending, actually. Been putting it off because I am hopeless with a needle and thread. Maybe when you are feeling better you could take a look at it. I would pay you, of course. After what you have done for me, I would mend 100 shirts for free, Beatrice said firmly. Well, I have only got the one that needs fixing right now, but I will keep that offer in mind. Isaac's eyes crinkled with amusement. How are you feeling? Think you can stand? Beatrice tested her legs, pushing herself up slowly. Her limbs felt weak and shaky, but functional. Isaac was at her side immediately, one hand hovering near her elbow in case she needed support. I am all right, she said, just a bit unsteady. That is to be expected. Come on, let me show you the bedroom. You should rest. Your body has been through an ordeal. He led her down a short hallway to a small room that held a narrow bed covered with a thick quilt, a simple dresser, and a chair by the window. It was clean and spare, but comfortable looking. I will bring you some clothes, Isaac said. They will be too big, but they will be dry and warm. Your dress is hanging by the fire. It should be dry by morning. Thank you, Beatrice said again, feeling like the words were inadequate but not knowing what else to say. Isaac nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Beatrice sank onto the bed, her legs suddenly too tired to hold her upright any longer. She could hear him moving around in the other room, the sound of drawers opening and closing. A moment later, there was a soft knock on the door. It is safe to come in, she called, making sure the blankets were securely wrapped around her. Isaac entered with an armful of clothes. Long johns, a work shirt, and some socks. Like I said, they will be too big, but they are clean. He set them on the foot of the bed. I will be in the main room if you need anything. Just call out. After he left, Beatrice dressed quickly in the borrowed clothes. He had been right about the fit. The long johns bagged around her legs and the shirt hung nearly to her knees, but they were warm and soft from many washings. She rolled up the sleeves and padded back out to the main room in her stockinged feet. Isaac was standing at the stove, stirring something in a pot. The smell of cooking meat and vegetables made Beatrice's stomach growl loudly. She pressed a hand to her belly, embarrassed, but Isaac just laughed. Good, you are hungry. That means you are recovering. He gestured to a rough wooden table with 2 chairs. Sit down, I've got stew. It is not fancy, but it is hot and filling. Beatrice sat, watching as he ladled thick stew into 2 bowls. He set one in front of her along with a spoon and a hunk of bread, then took the seat across from her with his own bowl. The stew was delicious, rich with beef and potatoes and carrots. She ate slowly, savoring each bite. This is wonderful, she said. Where did you learn to cook? Necessity, Isaac said with a shrug. When you live alone, you either learn to cook or you starve. I will not claim to be any kind of chef, but I can make a decent stew and biscuits that will not break your teeth. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Outside, the wind continued to howl, rattling the windows. But inside, with the fire crackling and the warmth of the food in her belly, Beatrice felt safer than she had in a long time. Can I ask you something? Isaac said, setting down his spoon. Of course. Why did you really come west? I mean, I know you said there were opportunities, but Pennsylvania has opportunities too. A young woman traveling alone all the way to Nebraska, that is a big risk. There must have been more to it than just looking for work. Beatrice was quiet for a moment, considering how much to share. There was something about Isaac that made her want to be honest, to let down the walls she usually kept up. You are right, she finally said. There was more to it. After my parents died, there was a man. He worked at my father's business. He seemed kind at first, attentive. He asked me to marry him, and I said yes because I was alone and scared and I thought he would take care of me. She paused, her fingers tightening around her spoon. But after we were engaged, he changed. He became controlling, jealous. He did not want me to have friends or go anywhere without him. One night he lost his temper over something small and he hit me. Isaac's expression darkened. Son of a bitch. I broke off the engagement the next day, but he would not accept it. He kept coming around, insisting I was making a mistake, that I belonged to him. It got worse and worse until I realized I would never be free of him if I stayed. So I took what little money I had and bought a train ticket west. I figured out here, in a place where no one knew me, I could start over fresh. Has he tried to find you? Not that I know of. I have not heard anything from him in 3 years. I think he finally accepted that I was gone. Beatrice met Isaac's eyes. That is why I have stayed at Mrs. Henderson's. Even though the work is hard and the pay is modest, it is safe there. Mrs. Henderson looks out for her girls. And I have been careful not to attract any attention, not to let any man get too close. That makes sense, Isaac said quietly. And I want you to know you are safe here too. I meant what I said before. I am a gentleman. I would never take advantage of a woman in a vulnerable position. I believe you, Beatrice said, and realized she meant it. There was something solid and trustworthy about Isaac Mills, something that made her feel safe in a way she had not felt in years. The storm raged through the night and into the next day. Beatrice slept deeply in the small bedroom, exhausted from her ordeal. When she woke, afternoon light was filtering through the window, weak and gray. She could still hear the wind, but it sounded less violent than before. She dressed in Isaac's oversized clothes again and ventured out to the main room. Isaac was sitting at the table, mending a bridle. He looked up when she entered and smiled. Good afternoon. How are you feeling? Much better. Warm. She moved to the window and looked out at the white landscape. Snow was still falling, but she could see farther than she had been able to yesterday. Is the storm letting up? Slowly. Probably be over by tonight. Tomorrow morning I will ride into town and let Mrs. Henderson know you are safe, and I will bring back your dress and proper clothes for you. Thank you. Beatrice turned from the window. Is there anything I can do to help? I hate feeling useless. You are recovering from nearly freezing to death. You are allowed to be useless for a day or two. But Isaac's eyes were kind. Although if you are serious about that shirt mending offer, I would not say no. It is my favorite shirt and I tore it on a fence post last week. Of course, I would be happy to. Isaac retrieved the shirt from a trunk in the corner and brought it to her along with a sewing kit. The tear was along the shoulder seam, clean and straight. An easy repair. Beatrice settled into the chair by the fire and set to work, her fingers moving with the practiced ease of long experience. You are good at that, Isaac observed, watching her work. Your stitches are so small and even. I have had a lot of practice. Mrs. Henderson keeps me busy. Beatrice threaded her needle through the fabric, pulling the torn edges back together. What about you? You said your father taught you about ranching. Do you have any brothers or sisters? No, I was an only child. My mother died when I was young. I barely remember her. It was just my father and me for most of my life. Isaac returned to his work on the bridle. He was a hard man in some ways, tough and strict, but he was fair, and he taught me the value of honest work. Everything I have, I earned with my own 2 hands. That is something to be proud of, I suppose, though sometimes I wish I had more to show for all those years of hard work. The ranch is small, barely enough to support one person, let alone a family. I have been thinking about trying to expand, buy some more land, increase the herd. But that takes money. and money is something I do not have a lot of." "You will get there," Beatrice said with quiet confidence. "I can tell you are the kind of man who does not give up easily." "What makes you say that? You rode out into a blizzard to check on your horses. Most men would have stayed inside where it was safe. But you put your animals' welfare ahead of your own comfort. That tells me something about your character." Isaac was quiet for a moment, and when Beatrice looked up from her sewing, she saw a faint flush on his cheeks. "I never thought of it that way. I just did what needed to be done." "Exactly." She returned her attention to the shirt, making the final stitches. "There, good as new." She held up the shirt, and Isaac came over to examine her work. He ran his fingers over the seam, testing its strength. "I cannot even tell it was torn. You are a miracle worker." "Hardly. It is just basic sewing." But she was pleased by his praise nonetheless. They spent the rest of the day in easy companionship. Isaac made dinner, a simple meal of fried salt pork and potatoes, and they talked about everything and nothing. Beatrice found herself laughing more than she had in months, relaxing in a way she rarely allowed herself to. Isaac was funny and smart, with a dry wit that caught her off guard. He told stories about growing up on the ranch, about the various mishaps and adventures he had experienced. In turn, she found herself sharing memories of her childhood in Pennsylvania, stories she had not thought about in years. By the time they both retired for the night, the storm had finally blown itself out. The wind had died to nothing, and when Beatrice looked out the window of her borrowed bedroom, she could see stars glittering in a clear black sky. The next morning dawned bright and blindingly white. The sun reflecting off the fresh snow was almost painful to look at. Isaac saddled his horse, a sturdy bay gelding, and prepared to ride into town. "I will be back by afternoon," he told Beatrice. "Make yourself at home. There is food in the larder if you get hungry." "Be careful," she said, surprised by how much she meant it. She had only known this man for 2 days, but already she felt a connection to him that she could not quite explain. "I will." He swung up into the saddle and touched the brim of his hat in a small salute. Then he was gone, the horse picking its way carefully through the deep snow. Beatrice spent the morning tidying up the cabin, which did not need much work since Isaac kept it fairly neat. She found his mending basket tucked in a corner and went through it, repairing the various tears and missing buttons she found. It felt good to be useful, to repay his kindness in whatever small way she could. Isaac returned in the early afternoon, as promised. He had a bundle of clothes with him, along with a basket of food from Mrs. Henderson. She was beside herself with worry, he reported, dismounting and bringing everything inside. "I assured her you were safe and being well looked after. She sent along some things she thought you might need, and she said to tell you to take all the time you need to recover. She does not expect you back until you are good and ready." That was kind of her. Beatrice took the basket and began unpacking it. There were eggs, fresh bread, a jar of preserves, and a cold roasted chicken. "Did you tell her what happened? How you found me?" I gave her the basics. "She is just grateful you are alive. She said more than one person got caught out in that storm. Not everyone was as lucky as you." The words hung heavy in the air. Beatrice thought about how close she had come to being one of the unlucky ones, and a shiver ran through her that had nothing to do with cold. "Hey," Isaac said softly, crossing to her. "You are safe now. That is what matters. I know. I just keep thinking about what might have happened if you had not found me, if you had decided to check your horses an hour later, or if you had gone a different direction. But I did not. I found you, and you are here, and you are safe." He reached out and gently touched her shoulder. "No sense dwelling on what might have been." Beatrice looked up at him, at his kind green eyes and strong, honest face, and felt something shift inside her. It was like a door opening, letting in light after years of darkness. She had been so careful for so long, keeping everyone at arm's length, never letting anyone get close enough to hurt her. But Isaac was different. She knew it in her bones, in her heart. "Isaac," she said quietly, "I want to stay." He blinked, confused. "Stay? You mean here at the cabin?" "Of course you can stay as long as you need to recover." "No, I mean, I want to stay with you, if you will have me." The words came out in a rush, and Beatrice felt her cheeks burning. "I know it is improper, and I know we barely know each other. But I feel something with you that I have never felt before. Safety, yes, but more than that. Comfort. Happiness. I do not want to go back to the boarding house and pretend none of this happened. I do not want to go back to being alone." Isaac stared at her, his expression unreadable. For a terrible moment, Beatrice thought she had made a horrible mistake, that she had misread everything. Then his face broke into a wide smile, and he laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Beatrice Grant, I have been trying to figure out how to ask you the exact same thing." He took both her hands in his grip warm and firm. "I do not know what this is between us, but I know I feel it too. From the moment I pulled you out of that snow, something inside me said this woman is important. And these past 2 days, getting to know you, talking with you, it has only gotten stronger. I do not want you to leave either." "Really?" Beatrice felt tears prickling at her eyes, but they were happy tears. "Really? But I want to do this right. I do not want there to be any question about your reputation or my intentions." Isaac squeezed her hands gently. "So here is what I propose. You stay here as my guest for another few days, properly chaperoned by the fact that we are keeping everything above board and Mrs. Henderson knows where you are. We spend that time getting to know each other better, making sure this feeling is real and not just the result of extreme circumstances. And if at the end of that time we both still feel the way we do now, then we start courting officially. Does that sound fair?" "That sounds perfect," Beatrice said, her heart feeling lighter than it had in years. The next week passed in a blur of happiness. True to his word, Isaac was a perfect gentleman, never overstepping the bounds of propriety. But they talked for hours every day, sharing their hopes and dreams, their fears and regrets. Beatrice told him about her childhood, about her parents and the life she had left behind. Isaac spoke of his father, of the lessons he had learned growing up on the ranch, of his dreams for the future. They also worked side by side, falling into an easy rhythm. Beatrice helped with the household chores, cooking and cleaning and mending. Isaac tended to his horses and cattle, checking on them daily to make sure they had survived the storm unscathed. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes just enjoying each other's company in comfortable silence. On the 5th day, Isaac rode into town and came back with a parcel wrapped in brown paper. He presented it to Beatrice with an almost shy expression. "I got you something," he said. "I hope you do not think it is too forward." Beatrice unwrapped the parcel to find a dress, simple but well made, in a soft blue fabric that reminded her of summer skies. "Isaac, this is beautiful, but you should not have spent your money on me." "I wanted to." "You cannot keep wearing my old work shirts, and besides, I wanted to get you something nice, something that was yours." He shifted his weight from foot to foot, suddenly uncertain. "Do you like it?" "I love it." Beatrice held the dress up to herself, admiring the neat stitching and the thoughtful details. "Thank you, truly." She went to the bedroom to try it on, and when she emerged, Isaac's expression made her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. "It fits perfectly," he said, his voice a little rough. "You look lovely." "You have good taste," Beatrice said, smoothing the fabric over her hips. The dress fit well, snug at the waist and falling gracefully to her ankles. It was the nicest thing she had owned in years. That evening, they sat together on the porch despite the cold, wrapped in blankets and watching the sun set over the snow-covered prairie. The sky turned brilliant shades of orange and pink and purple, the colors reflecting off the white landscape in a dazzling display. "I have been thinking," Isaac said, breaking the comfortable silence, "about what I want for our future if you will have me." Beatrice's heart skipped a beat. "Go on." "I want to expand the ranch, like I mentioned before, but more than that, I want to build something lasting. Something I can be proud of. A real home, not just a cabin, and I want someone to share it with, a partner, a wife." He turned to look at her, his green eyes serious. "Beatrice, I know we have not known each other long, only a week, really, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I am falling in love with you. Actually, I think I am already there. I love you." Beatrice felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "I love you too. I did not think I would ever feel this way about anyone. After what happened back in Pennsylvania, I thought I was broken. Too damaged to ever trust anyone again. But you have shown me that I was wrong. You have shown me what real kindness looks like, what real love feels like." "You are not broken," Isaac said fiercely. "You are strong and brave and beautiful, and any man who could not see that is a fool." "Then we are both fools in love," Beatrice said with a watery laugh. Isaac reached out and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. "Marry me, Beatrice. I know it is fast, but out here on the frontier, people do not have the luxury of long courtships. When you know, you know. And I know." "Will you be my wife?" "Yes," Beatrice said without hesitation. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Isaac pulled her into his arms, holding her close. They sat like that for a long time, wrapped in blankets and each other, watching the stars come out one by one in the darkening sky. They were married 2 weeks later in a small ceremony at the church in North Platte. Mrs. Henderson stood as Beatrice's witness, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief throughout the entire service. One of Isaac's neighbors, a grizzled old rancher named Thomas, stood up for Isaac. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, and when the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Isaac kissed Beatrice with such tenderness that she felt her heart might burst with happiness. Mrs. Henderson hosted a small reception at the boarding house, where the other residents and some of the townspeople came to offer their congratulations. Everyone seemed genuinely happy for the couple, and Beatrice was touched by the warmth of the community that had become her home. As they rode back to the ranch that evening, now officially husband and wife, Beatrice reflected on how much her life had changed in such a short time. A month ago, she had been alone, keeping herself carefully distant from everyone around her, afraid to let anyone close. Now she was married to a good man who loved her, riding toward a future that shone bright with possibility. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac asked, glancing over at her. "How happy I am," Beatrice said simply. "How lucky I am." "I am the lucky one," Isaac countered. "The luckiest man in Nebraska." Their first months of marriage were not without challenges. The ranch work was hard and money was often tight, but they faced everything together, partners in every sense of the word. Beatrice proved to be a quick learner, taking on more and more of the ranch duties as Isaac taught her how to care for the horses and cattle. She also continued her sewing work, taking in mending and making clothes for the townspeople to bring in extra income. As winter gave way to spring, the prairie transformed. The snow melted, revealing new green grass beneath. Wildflowers bloomed in profusion, painting the landscape in brilliant colors. Isaac worked from dawn to dusk, preparing the ranch for the busy summer season ahead. Beatrice worked alongside him, mucking stalls, mending fences, helping with the cattle. In the evenings, they would collapse into bed exhausted but happy, and Isaac would hold Beatrice close, murmuring words of love and appreciation. "I do not know how I ever managed without you," he told her one night. "You are my partner in everything. I could not do this without you." "We are in this together," Beatrice replied, kissing his cheek. "For better or worse, remember." "For better or worse," Isaac echoed. "Though so far it has been all better." In early summer, they had saved enough money to buy 3 more head of cattle, a small but significant expansion. Isaac was thrilled, talking excitedly about his plans for the future. "If we can keep growing the herd even slowly, within a few years we could have a real operation," he said. "We could hire some help, maybe even build that bigger house I told you about." "I do not need a bigger house," Beatrice said. "I am happy here with you, I know. But I want to give you everything. You deserve the world, Beatrice. I have the world. I have you." That summer was one of the happiest times of Beatrice's life. The work was hard, but it was satisfying in a way her sewing never had been. She loved being outdoors, loved working with the animals, loved the feeling of accomplishment that came from a hard day's labor. But most of all, she loved being with Isaac, loved the life they were building together. In late August, Beatrice began to suspect she might be pregnant. She waited another few weeks to be sure before telling Isaac, wanting to be certain. When she finally told him one evening after dinner, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. His face lit up with joy, and he swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to be parents." "We are," Beatrice confirmed, her own happiness matching his. In the spring, probably March or April, Isaac set her down gently as if she had suddenly become made of glass. "You need to rest. You should not be working so hard in your condition." "Isaac, I am pregnant, not dying. Women have babies all the time while continuing to work. I will be fine." But Isaac insisted on taking over the heavier chores, refusing to let Beatrice lift anything heavy or overtire herself. It was sweet, if a bit overprotective. Beatrice indulged him, knowing it came from a place of love and concern. As autumn arrived and the days grew shorter, they began preparing for the winter ahead. They laid in supplies, stocked the wood pile, and made sure the cabin was properly insulated against the cold. Isaac also began working on expanding one of the rooms, adding space for a nursery. "I want our child to have a proper room," he explained, hammering boards into place. "Not just a corner with a cradle." Beatrice watched him work, her hand resting on her belly where a small bump was beginning to show. She thought about how far she had come, from that terrified young woman fleeing Pennsylvania to the continent, loved woman she was now. The snow had made her fragile, brought her to the edge of death. But Isaac had made her precious. He had shown her what it meant to be truly valued, truly loved. Winter came again, as it always did on the Nebraska prairie. But this time, Beatrice faced it without fear. She was safe and warm in the home she shared with her husband, preparing for the arrival of their first child. When the snow began to fall, she stood at the window and watched it come down, remembering that terrible day when she had nearly died in a storm just like this one. "What are you thinking?" Isaac asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist, his hands resting on her growing belly. "I am thinking about how that storm brought us together," Beatrice said. "If I had not gotten lost in the snow, if you had not found me, none of this would have happened. We would never have met." "I prefer not to think about that," Isaac said, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I cannot imagine my life without you now, nor I without you." Beatrice leaned back against him, feeling the warmth of his body, the solid strength of him. "Do you ever wonder what might have been, if things had gone differently?" "No point in wondering. We are here now together, and that is what matters." He turned her gently to face him. "You are my whole world, Beatrice Mills. You and this baby we are going to have. Nothing else matters." She kissed him then, pouring all her love and gratitude into that kiss. When they finally pulled apart, they were both smiling. The winter passed slowly but peacefully. Beatrice continued her sewing work, making baby clothes and blankets in preparation for the spring. Isaac kept busy with the livestock, making sure they were well fed and sheltered from the worst of the winter weather. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, talking about their plans for the future, debating names for the baby, imagining what their child would be like. "I hope the baby has your eyes," Beatrice said one night, studying Isaac's face in the firelight. "They are such a beautiful color." "I hope the baby has your strength," Isaac replied, "your courage and your kindness." "We will love this child no matter what," Beatrice said firmly. "Boy or girl, whatever they look like, whatever kind of person they turn out to be, we will love them unconditionally." "Of course we will," Isaac agreed. "They are ours." March arrived with the first hints of spring. The snow began to melt, and Beatrice felt the baby moving more and more, strong kicks that made her gasp and laugh. She was growing impatient, eager to meet this little person who had been growing inside her for so many months. On a mild afternoon in early April, Beatrice felt the first contractions. She had been prepared for this, had read everything she could find about childbirth, but nothing quite prepared her for the reality of it. Isaac rode into town at breakneck speed to fetch the midwife, Mrs. Carson, an older woman who had delivered half the babies in North Platte. Mrs. Carson arrived and took charge immediately, shooing Isaac out of the bedroom and setting about making Beatrice as comfortable as possible. "First babies take their time," she told Beatrice calmly. "Do not try to rush it. Just breathe through the pains and let your body do what it knows how to do." The labor was long and difficult. Hours passed in a haze of pain and effort. Beatrice could hear Isaac pacing in the main room, his worry evident in every footstep. She wanted to call out to him, to reassure him, but she did not have the breath for it. Finally, as the sun was setting, she heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby crying. Mrs. Carson cleaned and wrapped the infant, then placed the small bundle in Beatrice's arms. "You have a son," she announced. "A healthy, strong boy." Beatrice looked down at her son, at his tiny red face and shock of dark hair, and felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I am your mother, Mrs. Carson opened the door and called Isaac in. He came immediately, his face pale with worry. But when he saw Beatrice sitting up in bed holding their son, relief and joy washed over his features. "A boy," Beatrice said, smiling up at him. "We have a son." Isaac knelt beside the bed, his eyes fixed on the baby. He reached out with one finger to gently touch the tiny hand, and his son immediately grasped it with surprising strength. "He is perfect," Isaac said, his voice thick with emotion. "Absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" Beatrice asked. They had discussed many names over the winter but had not settled on one definitively. Now, looking at their son, Isaac said, "James, after my father, James Henry Mills." "James," Beatrice repeated, testing the name. "I like it. Hello, James, Mrs. Carson stayed for a few hours more, making sure both mother and baby were doing well. Before she left, she pulled Isaac aside and spoke to him in a low voice. Beatrice could not hear what was said, but she saw Isaac nod seriously. After Mrs. Carson left, Isaac came back to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. "She said you need rest," he told Beatrice. "Lots of rest. She said childbirth takes a toll on a woman's body and you need time to recover." "I will rest," Beatrice promised. "As soon as this little one stops eating and falls asleep." James was nursing eagerly, and Beatrice marveled at the instinctive way he knew what to do. Everything about having a baby felt both completely natural and completely miraculous at the same time. Over the next weeks, they settled into a new routine. James was a good baby, eating and sleeping on a fairly regular schedule. Beatrice recovered well from the birth, regaining her strength quickly. Isaac was a devoted father, always willing to walk the floor with James when he was fussy, to change diapers, to help in any way he could. "I never knew I could love anything this much," Isaac confessed one night, holding his sleeping son against his chest. "I thought I understood love when I married you, but this is different. This is bigger than anything I ever imagined." "I know exactly what you mean," Beatrice said. "It is like our hearts grew larger to make room for him." As spring turned to summer, James grew and changed at what seemed like an astonishing rate. He started smiling, then laughing, then reaching for things. Every new development was a source of wonder and delight. The ranch continued to prosper. With the extra money Beatrice had been saving from her sewing work, they were able to buy more cattle. Isaac hired a young man named Peter to help with the heavy work, which gave him more time to spend with Beatrice and James. One evening in late summer, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset with James playing on a blanket at their feet, Beatrice said, "Do you remember what you said to me, right after we met, about wanting to build something lasting?" "I do," Isaac said. "I think we have done it. Look at all this." She gestured at the ranch, at the house Isaac had expanded, at their healthy, happy son. "We built this together, a real life, a real family." "We did," Isaac agreed. He reached over and took her hand, lacing their fingers together, "and we are just getting started. There is so much more ahead of us. More children, maybe, if we are blessed with them, yes. More land, more cattle, but mostly just more of this. More days together watching our children grow, working side by side, growing old together." "That sounds perfect to me." James made a happy babbling sound, as if agreeing with his parents. They both laughed, and Beatrice leaned her head on Isaac's shoulder, feeling completely at peace. The years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. James grew into a sturdy, curious toddler, then a bright young boy. When he was 2 years old, Beatrice gave birth to twin girls whom they named Ruth and Sarah. The twins were a handful, energetic and mischievous, but they brought even more joy to the household. Isaac expanded the ranch steadily, always cautious, never overextending. He proved to have a good head for business, knowing when to buy and when to wait, when to take risks, and when to play it safe. The Mills Ranch became known as one of the most reliable operations in the area. Beatrice continued her sewing work, though she had less time for it now with 3 children to care for. But she did not mind. Being a mother was more fulfilling than she had ever imagined. She loved watching her children grow and learn, loved the chaos and noise of a house full of life. When James was 5 years old and the twins were 3, Isaac surprised Beatrice by starting construction on a new house. It was larger than the original cabin, with proper bedrooms for each of the children, a spacious kitchen, and a parlor for receiving guests. "You said you did not need a bigger house," Isaac reminded her when she protested the expense. "I do not need it," Beatrice said, "but I certainly appreciate it, and the children will love having more space." The new house was finished by fall, and they moved in just before the first snow. It was beautiful, built solid and strong to withstand the harsh Nebraska winters. Beatrice stood in her new kitchen, looking out the window at the prairie beyond, and felt a surge of gratitude for everything she had been given. That winter was particularly harsh, with multiple blizzards that buried the ranch in snow. But inside the warm, sturdy house, the Mills family was cozy and safe. Beatrice would sometimes watch the snow falling outside and remember that day so many years ago when she had nearly died in a storm just like this. It seemed like another lifetime, another person entirely. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac would ask, catching her staring out the window. "Just remembering," she would reply, "and being grateful." One evening, after the children were all in bed, Isaac pulled out a bottle of whiskey he had been saving for a special occasion. He poured 2 small glasses and handed one to Beatrice. "What are we celebrating?" she asked. 10 years, Isaac said. "It has been 10 years since that day I found you in the snow, 10 years since my life truly began." Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes. "Has it really been that long? It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once." "I know." Isaac raised his glass. "To 10 more years, to 50 more years, to spending the rest of my life with you." "To us," Beatrice said, clinking her glass against his, "and to the snow that brought us together." They drank, the whiskey burning warm down Beatrice's throat. Then Isaac set down his glass and pulled her into his arms, dancing slowly to music only they could hear. Beatrice rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and felt completely content. The years continued to pass. James grew into a responsible young man, taking on more and more of the ranch duties. The twins grew into beautiful young women, smart and spirited. There were challenges along the way, bad years when the weather did not cooperate or cattle prices fell. There were illnesses and injuries, worries and fears. But through it all, Isaac and Beatrice faced everything together, their love for each other only growing stronger with time. When James was 18, he announced his intention to marry a young woman from town named Elizabeth. Beatrice helped plan the wedding, thinking back to her own simple ceremony all those years ago. James's wedding was larger and more elaborate, but the love between the young couple was just as real and just as strong. The twins married within a year of each other, Ruth to a banker's son and Sarah to a young lawyer who had recently set up practice in North Platte. Suddenly, the house that had seemed so full was quiet and empty, with just Isaac and Beatrice rattling around in it. "I miss them," Beatrice confessed one evening. "The children, I mean. I know they are grown and have their own lives now, but I miss the noise and the chaos." "I know," Isaac said, "but they are happy. We raised them right, taught them well. Now it is their turn to build their own lives the way we built ours. You are right, of course. I am just being sentimental. Nothing wrong with that." Isaac smiled at her. "Besides, I am looking forward to having you all to myself again. No children interrupting us, no endless chores that cannot wait. Just you and me like it was in the beginning." "We are not as young as we were in the beginning," Beatrice pointed out. "Speak for yourself." "I feel exactly the same as I did at 25. Isaac flexed his arms dramatically and Beatrice laughed. "You are ridiculous. You love me anyway." "I do. God help me, I really do." They settled into a new rhythm, just the two of them. The ranch was still operating, though they had hired more help to handle the day-to-day work. Isaac talked sometimes about selling, about retiring and moving into town. But Beatrice could tell his heart was not in it. The ranch was part of him, part of both of them. It was where they had built their life together. Grandchildren arrived, first one, then another, then a whole parade of them. James and Elizabeth had 3 children. Ruth had 2, and Sarah had 4. Suddenly, the quiet house was full again whenever the grandchildren came to visit, which was often. Beatrice loved being a grandmother, loved spoiling her grandchildren in ways she had never spoiled her own children. Isaac proved to be an indulgent grandfather, always ready with a story or a treat or a ride on his shoulders. Watching him with the grandchildren, Beatrice fell in love with him all over again. He was older now, his dark hair gone silver, his face lined with wrinkles from years of sun and wind. But to her, He was just as handsome as the day he had pulled her from the snow. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party at the ranch. It seemed like half the town showed up, bearing gifts and good wishes. There was food and music and dancing. At one point, Isaac pulled Beatrice onto the makeshift dance floor in the barn and waltzed her around while everyone clapped and cheered. "I love you," he murmured in her ear. "More than I did 30 years ago, which I did not think was possible." "I love you too," Beatrice replied. "You made my life worth living. You gave me everything." "You gave me everything," Isaac countered. "You were the missing piece I did not even know I needed." Later that evening, after all the guests had gone home and the children had left with their families, Isaac and Beatrice sat on the porch of the house he had built for her all those years ago. The prairie stretched out before them, golden in the light of the setting sun. "Do you remember what I said that first night after I asked you to marry me?" Isaac said. "You said a lot of things that night." "I said when you know, and I was right. I knew from the moment I saw you that you were going to be important in my life. I did not know how exactly, but I knew." "I knew too," Beatrice admitted. "I was so scared to trust you, but my heart knew before my head caught up. Best decision I ever made pulling you out of that snow. Best decision I ever made accepting your proposal." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun sink below the horizon. Then Isaac said, "I have been thinking about that day a lot lately, how it all could have gone so differently. If I had been a few minutes later, if the storm had been worse, if I had gone a different direction looking for my horses, any of those things, and we never would have met." "But none of those things happened," Beatrice said firmly. "We did meet. We did fall in love. We built this beautiful life together. That is what matters. You are right." Isaac took her hand, his grip still strong despite his years. "No sense dwelling on what might have been when what actually happened is so much better than anything I could have imagined." "Exactly." Beatrice squeezed his hand. "We have been blessed, Isaac, more blessed than most people ever get to be." "We have," he agreed, "and I am grateful for every single day." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Beatrice thought about how far she had come from that frightened young woman who had fled Pennsylvania all those years ago. She had been so broken then, so sure she would never be able to trust anyone again. But Isaac had shown her what real love looked like: patient, kind, steady, and true. He had given her a home, a family, a purpose. He had made her feel precious, and it had all started with the snow. The snow that had nearly killed her had also brought her to the man who would become her whole world. It was funny how life worked sometimes, how the worst moments could lead to the best things. "What are you smiling about?" Isaac asked, noticing her expression. "Just thinking about how much I love you," Beatrice said, "and how grateful I am for that blizzard 30 years ago." "The snow made you fragile," Isaac said softly, echoing words he had spoken many times over the years. "But I made you precious." "You did," Beatrice agreed. "You truly did." They sat together on the porch long into the night. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life together one day at a time, who had loved each other through good times and bad. The ranch around them was quiet, the animals settled for the night, the prairie peaceful under the stars. Inside the house, photographs lined the walls telling the story of their life together. Isaac and Beatrice on their wedding day, young and full of hope. The children at various ages, growing from babies to adults. Grandchildren in every configuration, smiling gap-toothed smiles at the camera. Each photograph was a moment frozen in time, a piece of the beautiful tapestry they had woven together. As they finally rose to go inside, Isaac turned to Beatrice one more time. "I meant what I said earlier. I love you more now than I did when we married." "How is that possible?" Beatrice asked with a gentle smile. "You have been saying you could not possibly love me more for 30 years. And yet somehow I keep finding more room in my heart for you," Isaac said. "Every day, every year my love for you grows. It is the most amazing thing." "I feel the same way," Beatrice said. "You are my heart, Isaac Mills. You always have been and you always will be." They went inside together, arms around each other's waists, and closed the door on the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments to add to their collection of memories. But tonight they had each other, and that was more than enough. The years that followed were gentle ones. Isaac and Beatrice finally did sell most of the ranch, keeping just the house and a few acres around it. They spent their time gardening, reading, and visiting with their ever-growing family. More grandchildren arrived, and then great-grandchildren, each one a miracle that filled their hearts with joy. On quiet evenings, they would sit together and remember. They talked about the early days when they had been young and strong and full of dreams. They talked about raising their children, about the challenges they had faced and overcome. They talked about all the good years they had shared, all the love they had built between them. "I would not change a single thing," Isaac said one evening when they were both well into their 70s. "Not one moment, not one decision. It has all been perfect." "Even the hard times?" Beatrice asked. "Especially the hard times," Isaac said, "because they made the good times that much sweeter, and because we faced them together." Beatrice could not argue with that. Every trial, every difficulty, every challenge had only made their bond stronger. They had been tested by life many times, and they had always emerged on the other side together, their love intact. When Isaac was 78 years old, he fell ill with pneumonia. Beatrice nursed him with the same fierce determination she had brought to everything else in her life. But this time it was not enough. On a cold February morning, with Beatrice holding his hand and their children gathered around the bed, Isaac passed peacefully from this world. The grief was overwhelming. Beatrice felt as though part of her own soul had been ripped away. For 52 years, Isaac had been her partner, her love, her best friend. The world without him seemed impossibly empty, but she was not alone. Her children rallied around her, and her grandchildren, and even her great-grandchildren. They filled the house with noise and life, reminding her of all the reasons Isaac had loved living. Slowly, painfully, Beatrice began to heal. She lived for another 5 years after Isaac's death, years filled with family and memory. She told her grandchildren and great-grandchildren stories about the old days, about the Wild West as it had really been, about the man who had saved her life and stolen her heart all those years ago. On a warm spring day when the prairie was covered in wildflowers, Beatrice passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 81. Her children found her in the morning, looking peaceful and almost smiling, as if she had finally been reunited with the man she loved. They buried her next to Isaac in the small cemetery on the hill overlooking the ranch. At the funeral, her eldest son James stood up to speak. "My mother lived an extraordinary life," he said. "She came west alone and afraid, running from a past that had hurt her. She could have become bitter and closed herself off from the world. Instead, she found love. She found my father, and together they built something beautiful. They built this family, this legacy of love that extends through 3 generations now and will continue for generations to come." He paused, looking out at the assembled family members, at the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that Isaac and Beatrice had brought into the world, directly and indirectly. "My father used to say that the snow made my mother fragile, but he made her precious. I think that is true. But I also think my mother made my father precious. They made each other precious. That is what real love does. It takes two people and makes them better, stronger, more than they could ever be alone. My parents showed us all what true love looks like, and for that, we will be forever grateful. As the family gathered after the funeral to share memories and comfort each other, the stories flowed freely. Stories about Isaac's dry humor and his devotion to his family. Stories about Beatrice's strength and her kindness to everyone she met. Stories about the ranch and the children and all the years of love that had filled that house. And through it all, the central story remained the same. A woman lost in a snowstorm, near death. A man who found her and brought her home. Two people who should never have met but did, and who fell in love in a way that changed both their lives forever. The house still stands on the prairie, passed down through the generations. The ranch land has been divided and sold, but the house remains in the family, a testament to everything Isaac and Beatrice built together. On the mantel, in a place of honor, sits a photograph of the two of them on their 50th wedding anniversary, smiling at each other with eyes full of love. And sometimes, on winter nights when the snow falls soft and quiet over the Nebraska prairie, you can almost feel their presence there. Two souls who found each other in the most unlikely way, who built a life together one day at a time, who loved each other with a devotion that transcended everything, even death itself. The snow had made her fragile, bringing her to the very edge of death. But the cowboy had made her precious, showing her what it meant to be truly loved. Together, they had created something beautiful and lasting, a love story for the ages, a legacy that would live on long after they were gone. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Not the struggles or the hardships, not the cold winters or the hot summers, not the lean years or the prosperous ones. What mattered was the love they had shared, the life they had built, the family they had created. What mattered was that they had found each other, and that they had chosen to face every day together, hand in hand, heart to heart, until death finally parted them. And even death, in the end, was not really a parting. Because their love lived on in every child and grandchild, in every story told around the dinner table, in every couple who looked at their example and thought, "That is what I want. That is real love." Isaac and Beatrice Mills had lived and loved in the Wild West during a time when life was hard and survival was never guaranteed. But they had found something precious together, something worth more than all the gold in California or all the cattle on the prairie. They had found true love, and they had held on to it with everything they had. The snow had made her fragile. The cowboy had made her precious. But together, they had made something eternal.